Hi, everybody. It's Brian, and
We're doing now?
yeah, it's recording.
Why didn't you say something? I was like this.
We're rolling.
Okay. I was gonna say action or something.
Action. Hey, everybody. Okay. What? This is wasting my hard drive space.
I didn't tell you to record.
Okay, I'm doing it now for real. Hey, everybody. It's Brian and Myra, and we just want to give a quick update on what's going on with the channel and kind of what we've been up to and our thoughts on the real estate market in general and where the channel is going to be evolving to. And so I feel like we've not been really active on the channel a whole lot lately, and I know we've been getting a lot of questions on our channel about whether or not we're still actively practicing real estate. I did give an update not too long ago, well, actually it's probably been 6 months now, about whether or not we are still actively practicing, and I did address what the plan was there, but it's even probably evolved even since then. But I did want to give some thoughts on what we feel is going on in the real estate market, whether or not we're still practicing real estate, and whether or not we feel it's a good time to be a realtor in today's market. But I guess just to give a little bit of a background as to what we're currently doing. If you aren't familiar, I have another channel called A Life After Layoff, which is more of a career coaching channel. And we started doing the real estate after I experienced the layoff back in 2020. So at that time, I ended up getting laid off, and I ended up starting a career coaching business and started a YouTube channel. Some people are familiar with me over there. And basically what I was doing was creating this content, starting a business, and not really knowing what was going to happen with it. And so as I was building this channel, we also at the same time decided to become real estate agents. And so we've talked about our journey there through the other videos in this channel, and you can go back and check out some of the earlier content and see that. And we walk through how we became real estate agents. But the purpose of it was we were looking for a career path that Myra could pursue, but I also wanted something. I'd had an interest in real estate for a fairly long time myself. And I felt like, why not? While she's doing it, I wanted to support her. So I decided to go get my real estate license as well. And we basically launched two businesses at the same time, or we're trying to launch two businesses at the same time. Well, as I guess fortune would have it, the Life After Layoff channel, the business, the coaching business ended up taking off. And before we knew it, we had a full-time business on our hands, and I was struggling to keep up with the volume of things that were happening, all the emails behind the scenes, kind of dealing with everybody from more of a client side, whereas I handle more of the kind of like the creative content creation, kind of the face of the business. And so Myra actually stepped in as more of a client-facing role, and that kind of took us away from. It took us away from doing the real estate in as aggressively as we would have normally done it, mainly because we already had a business that was working and it was doing well. So it was really kind of more out of necessity that I needed you to step over there. And at the time we kept our licenses active for a while, and then we decided to kind of pull back on our activity. We were doing a whole bunch of stuff with trying to build the business. We were going off and filming content. We'll talk about that later on in this video, but what we were doing is trying to build that up, and what we ended up finding out was that the other business ended up taking a lion's share of our time. So we kind of switched gears, and at a certain point, the other business basically told us that we needed to focus full time on that. And so we actually kind of stepped away from real estate. I mean, we really still aren't doing real estate actively today, but it isn't because we didn't want to do it. It was just because we had
not enough time.
Yeah, simply put, there's just not enough time. And honestly, I could probably use another couple of full-time employees on the career coaching side of things, but it is what it is. And so I wanted to just give an update. We wanted to share what our thoughts are on the real estate market and where we're taking this channel as a result of that. And so do you want to just share what kind of stuff were we doing with real estate? We walked away from the real estate business. I'd say probably officially walked away from. I let my license retire about a year and about January of last
A
year.
year and a half.
Yeah. So I just decided not to renew because it costs me, you got to pay insurance, you got to do continuing education, you have to do things to keep your license active. So I ended up stepping away first, and I said, listen, everything that I was going to be doing behind the scenes was going to be the marketing side of it anyway. She was going to be the front face of it. And I was just going to help with managing websites, managing social media, and all that kind of stuff. And basically, we just decided that I could do everything that I needed to do to support her without actually carrying a license. We kind of wanted to be a husband-wife team when we were doing it. That was kind of the goal. But just realized that I didn't necessarily need to do that in order to be successful. So when we first started the channel, one of our major focuses in marketing the business was boots on the ground presence. And it was something that our training, like the Keller Williams training, told us to do. So we were kind of following like the traditional
The guidelines that they put out.
Yeah, which to me was not. I know it's tried and true, so it's like this is not knocking it, but I felt like everybody else was doing the traditional. You go around and you knock on doors, and
The door knocking.
So we were doing some of that. We
did a lot of that actually. Yeah.
So we created door hanging, basically brochure. I created a brochure that looked really nice, and we literally went from neighborhood to neighborhood with kids in tow, walking around these neighborhoods. We had certain neighborhoods that we canvassed, and we said, okay, we're going to target. We kept it really local. It was like within a 2 or 3 mile radius of our house. And we said, we just want to be the most well-known in a 2 mile radius from our house. That was kind of the original plan, is to let's be really well-known here, and then we'll gradually work our way outward. And so, we walked around, I don't know how many neighborhoods. And for you being relatively introverted, kind of having to walk up and...
Yeah, it's not easy, but you have to.
Knocking on doors and making chit chat with strangers. And then I think that there is some level of skepticism. People look at you like, why are you coming up and talking to me? But what we were just explaining what we were doing. And, I think for the most part, people were receptive of it. And I feel like if we had continued to do that, then that would have paid dividends, especially in our local area. I also think that you really need to be very involved civically. Like if you belong to what were some of the things like churches, if you belong to a church or a civic groups, where you're around a lot of different people that are in the local area. So it's kind of just constantly getting your name out. And that was one of the things that we were really focusing on. So we were handing out these brochures everywhere, these door hanging cards, and we would go from neighborhood to neighborhood, and it would take several hours to work in a neighborhood. And sometimes people would stop you and you'd have a long conversation with them, and then they would tell you about, you should go check out the door 2 doors down. I think they're talking about selling. So then you go down and try to, solicit. But I was never a big fan of just outwardly marketing myself. You need to hire us. It was really more just providing them information and giving them an option or something to think about. We wanted something that would go on somebody's, would put it on their fridge and they would think about us a while later. So one of the things that Keller Williams gave the idea of, and I think that this was something that resonated with us more because it wasn't so traditional. There was a seminar where a guy came on, one of the more successful real estate agents in the area, and gave the idea of doing open houses, but not necessarily. In order for you to do an open house, you have to have a property. And so how did that work in order to do the open house? So as somebody who was a new agent who didn't have any leads yet.
Yeah, so this was the main way that he got his leads, and he was very successful in it. So he talked about finding properties that are listed with your brokerage. The people who have listed them, go to them, see if they are having any open houses, and if they need you to work the open houses for them.
And so what did we find with that when we tried to do that?
Well, when we were trying to do it, there was barely any houses on the market. There was a complete shortage. So
yeah, we tried to do it at the peak of the market skyrocketing, where it was you couldn't keep up with the how fast things were changing. Houses were getting 2 and 3 offers, maybe how many offers?
They were up to 30 offers.
30 offers?
Yes.
And
it was just crazy.
And how much over asking price were they going?
At least 20, 30.
Yeah, so it's even for the crappiest house was getting massive offers way above asking price. And so what we were finding is that A, there was not a lot of inventory, but B, they didn't really need help selling these things.
No,
So there
they
was
didn't need any help then. So that would have worked in a normal market, but
yeah.
not during the time we were trying to.
So that was like, I really loved that idea, but it ended up not working because of that exact reason. And so I think from there, we went back to the drawing board. We're like, okay, now we're going to come at it from a social media perspective, because if we can capture people coming in from out of town and we can get them to be we can be the point of contact teaching them, because we did the same thing. We moved from out of town and we felt like, hey, we've got a good voice we understand how it is to move to this area with without knowing anybody, without having any established roots. So we decided to start doing reviews of neighborhoods, and we were building a library of, we were just going from neighborhood to neighborhood, filming a whole bunch of stuff, kind of jumping out of the car, filming really quickly, jumping back in the car, and we were kind of going around it and talking about that. And I think we started a series on how to build a house. We built our own house, and so we were talking through some of that. And we didn't get too terribly far with we did a couple of the major towns, and I was still editing them.
Yeah. You started running out of time though.
Started running out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, because what I was finding is that I was struggling to keep up with both businesses at the same time. I had the Life After Layoff business, and then I had this business with trying to build up this really content business with real estate, and we had a website and all that kind of stuff. And I was building out a LinkedIn presence for you, and we were doing like all this stuff behind the scenes. But what we were trying to do is approach it from more of a social media perspective, which I actually really like that idea. I think that's, if I was going to really build out a real estate business, of course you should do the traditional stuff that Keller Williams talks about. Like what is their main thing? You basically talk to everybody in your area, just
talking to everybody, like getting to know everybody, every chance you get, finding somebody to talk to and letting them know who you are.
Yeah, and that didn't really work well for us because we're pretty introverted people and don't really, as much as people might be surprised, like we don't really like, it's going to sound really terrible, we don't really like talking to people. We don't really like getting out and like just going in front of a bunch of strangers constantly, always having a sales hat on. Like sometimes when I go out to a restaurant, I just want to hang out with her and have dinner and not worry about trying to sell to the person sitting at the table next to me. And frankly, I feel like that's kind of like,
it feels ingenuine to me.
It feels ingenuine. It feels really salesy, and I don't like that. So that's why we were really kind of going through the social media route, because I felt like if people saw what we had to offer and came and approached us, it would be a lot easier to acquire clients than it would be to go off and forcibly insert yourself. Because most people, when you're trying to sell them something directly, you like solicit them, you come into their space. I feel like people's first reaction is just to put a wall up their block, and I do the same. I
do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the guy who rings the doorbell trying to sell me pest control or whatever, it's like, it's just not effective. Like, why don't you teach me about why pest control is important, and then I'll come find you and say, hey, I'm ready for you to come and have, get my service, buy your service. But that's where I felt like we were going to go, and we were building for our business. But we just got to the point where the Life After Layoff business just kind of took over, and it just became out of necessity. So to her point earlier, is that it became so busy that we decided that, okay, we have more traction here. This thing's actually working, and it's not that we didn't want to do the real estate, but we decided to put it on the back burner. And I think at the same time we were deciding, I think what made it easier is that it's like the market went skyrocketing up. Like we had this crazy buyer's market, and then what happened after that? The interest rates, like they went up skyrocketing. So then what we found is that there's not enough buyers. Then there is a market where nobody can afford a house anymore. And so over the last 18 months or so, like housing has certainly come down. It's
come down a lot.
Yeah.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
It went up so high.
Yeah. And it was like, you kind of never thought it was going to end. And then it came screeching down. It's like now it's fallen quite a bit, and I feel like there is with the interest rates, people just aren't buying. I think the number of housing starts, and when you start looking at all the data behind the real estate market, it's like just like the job market. Everything has been like whiplash back and forth, and it just became a very difficult environment, especially as new agents, to get a foothold in. I feel like it would have been easier if it wasn't like we started off at a time when it was probably the most chaotic the market has ever been. And that's just not a good recipe for being new agents trying to get your foot in the door. And then also as a real estate agent in today's market, there's been some new laws that have been passed. They're changing how agents get paid. And so basically, I'm sure you're familiar if you're doing any research into real estate, but starting in July of 2024, this year, agents will get paid differently. They no longer, I think it's the buyer no longer has to pay. They can individually negotiate their compensation with their agent, and so the agent has to be competitive. In some cases, they're not going to automatically just get a 2.5% cut. They actually have to market themselves, and potentially it could even be piecemeal. Like, okay, I'll write your contract for this amount, and it's like almost becomes like you're paying for the specific services that they're providing, which in the old way of doing things, the seller had to pay a lot more money in real estate fees and realtor fees, and they weren't necessarily getting a whole lot of work out of it. For in some cases, if you had a buyer that landed in your inbox from a Zillow, so you send your name off through Zillow, it lands in your inbox. You take the buyer to a house that they found themselves because they're interested. You just call their real estate agent. You say, okay, I'm going to bring you through I got buyers that you just literally met 5 minutes ago. You show up, they like the house enough because they already liked it online. They buy it, and you're supposed to, and then you get like a $20,000, $25,000 check. And I think that's where a lot of people didn't feel that was very fair. For real estate agents, that's great, but for the person who's trying to sell their house, not so great. And so that rule has changed that and made it much more competitive. And so I think really, in order to be successful in real estate in today's market, you need to have the seller. I think you need to have sellers and not be necessarily representing buyers.
I think it's better, yeah.
And that's what Keller Williams was preaching the whole time, is that the seller is better. But again, there's a lot of people who can't afford these houses. Interest rates are north of, I don't know what they are right now, but they've hovered around 7%. And a house that even when we started was, especially when we built this house, which was a certain price, now it's $2,000 more for the exact same house just because of the interest rates. And so, it's pushing a lot of people out of the affordability range. So all of these things kind of happened all at the same time. The real estate market was crazy, and the everything that was going on with the business, kind of a perfect storm. And then with the changes in the rules, we just decided that, hey, why don't we just focus on doing a life after layoff, because it was going really well, and therefore we just decided to purposely step back from real estate. And it wasn't because we didn't want to do it; it was just because we had other priorities that took hold. So I guess the long and the short of it is do we feel that real estate is still a viable option for somebody that's looking to switch into it as a new agent? What do you think? Do you think it's still viable?
I think it is. I just think that with the market now, it's a lot harder. I think it's going to take more effort than it probably would have a few years ago.
I don't think it's as clear. I think as a career coach, I also think that a lot of people left a traditional workplace. They either got laid off and they moved into, they were trying to figure out what was next for them. I think becoming a real estate agent has traditionally been a relatively low barrier to entry. I mean, you have to go through the test and all that stuff, but you don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to really interview for it. Pretty much any agency will pick you up because you're paying their fees, and so it's not really hard to get with an agency. But I think that a lot of people moved into real estate thinking that it would be a viable option. But the problem is that a ton of real estate agents kind of moved into that market. And then I think a lot of them have kind of moved back out of it again, realizing that it's not necessarily, it's starting at a really bad time. So you could take advantage of it if you have a good, solid marketing strategy, and you are it's not an easy route. No. It's when people think like, oh, I'm going to become a real estate agent. Yeah, you can it's lucrative. Unfortunately, it's gotten a little less lucrative for certain aspects of real estate, but it can certainly still be a lucrative route, and you can carve yourself a niche. I see people who are still killing it in the real estate market around here, even in a relatively challenging market, but it is not, I would say it's The good agents will definitely separate themselves from the people who aren't willing to do the work. And the period of time that we were really hustling at it, I could tell like this. I think if we continued at it, we would be pretty successful with it. I think pretty much anything we set our minds to, we'll be pretty successful with. But I feel like there was a path there. Do I feel like it's still valid? I think that there's still a validity to the career path, but you have to go in eyes wide open and know exactly what you're getting into, and you have to be willing to flex and bend to the market. And it's probably not going to be something where the peak of the market, you could probably, if you found a couple of buyers, I mean, the commissions were great, but it was a really tough time. I think it'd be better to start when the market is back to like equilibrium and it's not so up and down, because like right now it's still not healthy, and I don't know what's, just like the job market, I don't know what's going to create a healthy market. Certainly the interest rates need to come down. If the interest rates don't come down and prices correct, even though it's painful, but prices need to correct even more in a lot of markets, there's still a lot of very overpriced houses. I think that it's going to be continue to be a relatively challenging market, but you can carve out a nice niche if you know what you're doing. If you're really good at marketing yourself, you like doing the handshaking, you don't mind going around and doing the old-fashioned way. And if we start to see, I'm thinking that the idea of going in and hosting, it's not having an open house, but it's what's the difference, like when you're the agent going in and you're a new agent, you don't have the listing. It's hosting
hosting someone else's
it's like
open house for them. So it's hosting the open house for the listing agent.
Yeah, basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring buyers in for that agent who listed it. So it would be your own agent. Like it'd be in your same house.
Yeah, it would be your buyer though that you would get.
Yeah.
You're trying to get a buyer, so you're not. There's no competition with you and the
listing
agent because they already have it. You're trying to get the buyer, so you're helping them out by working the open house for them. Now they don't have to do it, but you're also getting the opportunity to gain a buyer for them.
Yeah, so I think that's probably now more viable than it was when we were doing it, because
when we were doing it, whenever I would watch the website looking for listings to pop up constantly, and when they would, I would try to reach out to the person, and by then there were 4 or 5 other people ahead of me because everybody was trying to get that house at that point because there were so little.
Yeah, it was like a feeding frenzy, and all these new agents were coming into the market. Yeah. And by the time you even got anybody to respond to you, they already had like 6 offers on the place.
Yeah.
So it was like, we don't need your help. But I think now, because some of the houses are sitting on the market longer, that's probably a more viable option. Or you can even offer to host an open house for somebody. If you see a listing out there, you could potentially just go to that listing agent, say, I'll offer to do your open house for you, and run it yourself. And I think that that's a viable option too. So where we're going to head with this channel is we're still going to talk about some real estate stuff. We're not going to completely abandon that. And if we were starting our business, the ideas that we were pursuing and how we would do it. But I think even beyond that, a lot of people have decided to switch into real estate as a career, kind of career change. And there are other ways besides just a real estate agent. It's a very topsy-turvy market. You have ups, you have extreme downs. There are other ways to make income, and very good income, by working from your home, working from a computer, not having to go out and get any degrees or any specialized training. And I want to cover some more of those because I think it's such an important component of protecting your family, protecting your income. And so this channel will have more of that slant. It'll be ideas on and for my philosophy around multiple streams of income and how you can start to implement some of them in your own life so that you can build a future that's relatively free, and you don't have to necessarily rely on a single paycheck. So that's the long and the short of it. You'll probably see, just being realistic, she's still going to be working behind the scenes. You'll probably see more of my face, unfortunately, than hers, although I will occasionally drag you in. You can't get away from this that easily, but I will be probably more of the face of this channel, but we will... we look forward to continuing to bring you the content around how to have alternative income. So that's all we got. Anything else?
No.
Okay. All right. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.